In this video, I'm going to be going over the confirmation bias and how this impacts athletes. Hey there, I'm Eli Straw, mental performance coach and the founder of SuccessStartsWithin.com. Confirmation bias means that we are looking for and finding things that support the beliefs that we already hold. For example, we might be thinking that we are not good, so then we're going to look for reasons to validate why we are not good. The same thing happens if we believe that we are good players. We're going to look for reasons why we are good players. So really put simply, the confirmation bias goes off of this understanding that our minds seek to validate what we believe. So if I'm believing something about myself, my mind is going to find reasons to say, hey, yeah, that's true. That is happening. But it doesn't matter if it's a negative thing or a positive thing, and this is where we can get into trouble as athletes. So I was talking with an athlete this past week, and this idea of the confirmation bias came up in our conversation. He was explaining to me how he does not believe he is very good at a certain part of his game. Because he doesn't feel that he's good, what ends up happening is he nitpicks his performance and his practice. So after his practice, he goes back and he looks for, without even really knowing it or being consciously aware that he is doing this, he looks for reasons to validate the fact that he is not good at this specific situation or this specific skill within his performance. So then what ends up happening, the more he goes back and he looks for and validates why he's not good at that. Well, the stronger this belief that he's not good at it grows, and then the more he's going to try to find and validate that in the future. But unfortunately, because he feels this way, his confidence continues to drop. Therefore, he does not give himself the opportunity to improve and to grow. But something else that is happening for him, or happening to him, is that because he holds this negative belief about a certain part of his game, and because his mind is then trying to validate that, right? Trying to make it true. This is where we also see self-sabotaging behavior take place during games, where we end up performing to match that, right? It's not just that our minds are going back after a game or after a practice and validating the beliefs that we have by examining the mistakes we made. We are actually performing up to that level. This is where I talk to a lot of athletes about the idea of performing up to our self-image. Well, our self-image is just made up of our beliefs. So if our beliefs are negative, they're thinking things like, or we're believing things like, I'm not good at this part of my game. Well, then we're going to play up to that belief. We're going to play in a way that matches that. This is where you find yourself passing the ball off, not taking up shots or not taking shots, not going after balls, not trying to be first in line to go and try a drill because you're afraid of it, right? You don't believe that you're actually that good. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing that the confirmation bias does a lot of different negative things to us as athletes when we hold these negative beliefs about ourselves and about our games, right? The confirmation bias will cause confidence to continue to drop because we're always nitpicking and finding reasons to prove why we believe what we believe in a negative way. It'll also lead to this self-sabotaging behavior where we are not performing up to the level we know we can perform. However, we can also see this confirmation bias on the kind of flip side where we believe we're so good, but this actually has a negative impact on our game. Where I'm believing that I'm really good, so then I confirm why I'm good, and then I'm overlooking the mistakes that I'm making. So I'm not able to actually improve because I'm trying to validate why I am so good. So I want to give you two examples that really highlight both of these types of confirmation bias and how they are negatively impacting an athlete. So for athlete number one, this is where he holds a negative belief about himself. So he's a soccer player, and he believes that he is not good at passes. What ends up happening is that after practices, his mind naturally goes back and he dwells on all the bad passes he made. Because he's dwelling on all those bad passes, that then reinforces the fact that he believes he's not good at passes. Then what ends up happening during games is that we see this self-sabotaging behavior occur where he's not making tough passes because he doesn't believe that he can be good at making passes. So he's just making very safe passes that are ineffective. This ends up getting him pulled off the field. And then after the game, once more, he goes back and he is dwelling on the bad passes he made. He's dwelling on the fact that, see, I was just making safe passes. I don't even have the confidence to make good passes. And then this cycle just continues. Another example is an athlete who believes they're so good. So this is a baseball player who believes that he is so good at hitting that he doesn't really need to work on it. So after games, he goes back and he looks at all the things that he did well. That's all he thinks about, right? He's just thinking, wow, I had really good at-bats. But he ended up going 1 for 4. So what about those 3 at-bats where he got out? Well, he's blaming the umpire. He's saying that it was unlucky. He's saying that, he had a good at-bat, but it was unlucky that that he hit it right at the guy. What he's doing is he's failing to examine the things that he can improve upon that would actually make him become a better hitter in the future, so he's limiting his growth. The confirmation bias hurts us as athletes because it confirms the negative beliefs we hold about ourselves, even if they're not true. And it validates the overconfidence we have about ourselves, even if there is room to improve. So what can we do here? Well, first and foremost, instead of allowing this confirmation bias to validate and ingrain the idea that we're not good enough or limit us from improving because we fail to see the things that we can improve upon, we want to make sure that we have a growth mindset as an athlete. Now, a growth mindset as an athlete means that you're constantly allowing improvement to happen. You're not saying, I am not good at these things and setting that in stone. I'm not a good passer. I'm not a good shooter. I can't hit. I can't field. We're not saying those things. We're recognizing that maybe we're not too great at it now, but we can improve upon it. So we're going to work every single day to develop and get better. The same thing is true if we have a little bit, too high of confidence in certain areas. We are accepting that there's always room for improvement. Yes, maybe I'm really good at it right now, but I can still get better and better and better day by day. The next thing we want to make sure of is we want to make sure that we are challenging these beliefs. To be honest with you, in my work as a mental performance coach, I see the confirmation bias hurt athletes more on this negative side, more so than them having overconfidence, because I typically don't work with a whole lot of athletes who are too confident. They just aren't usually the ones that I'm working with in one-on-one coaching. So for the most part, it's athletes who are struggling with holding really negative beliefs about themselves and their game, and then this confirmation bias validates those beliefs, even when more often than not, they're not true. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are challenging our negative beliefs, asking ourselves, am I really as bad as I think I am? Were there some positives to my performance? Even though I'm dwelling on all these mistakes, did I do some things well today? Or am I really as bad as I think I am? We've got to challenge those beliefs. Because if we know that this confirmation bias is always present, our minds want to and seek to validate what we believe. If we know that's happening, then we want to work on developing more positive beliefs. Because what we can see happen in a positive way, not in this overconfidence way like I was describing earlier, but in more of a positive way, is that if we start developing more confident beliefs about ourselves, simply the belief of, I am a good player, we will validate that belief. We're going to find reasons why we're good. Then that will feed a healthy level of confidence. And then as that feeds a healthy level of confidence, if we also have a growth mindset adopted to where we're constantly seeking to improve, we're going to continue to improve upon our mistakes, but we're going to be building our confidence. So then you're going to be showing up to games and practices with higher trust in yourself. And then you'll play more aggressively, and then you'll play better. And then we see this confirmation bias working to your advantage. But that only happens once you start to challenge these negative beliefs. And then the third tip that I have for you is you want to start looking at your game more objectively. This is something that I suggest to all the athletes I work with, because whenever we're dealing with fear, anxiety, we're having a lot of negative beliefs about ourselves, typically we're not really seeing our games in an objective way. What it means to see your game in an objective way is that you are viewing your performance as though you're viewing somebody else's performance. 9 times out of 10, we are not as emotionally attached to other people's performances as we are our own performance. So if I'm examining my friend's performance, I'm going to be able to say, yeah, he did these things well today. He made a couple mistakes. He could work on this. He could work on that. And I would be done, right? I wouldn't be thinking, oh my gosh, I suck. He sucked. That was a terrible, terrible game. How is he ever going to be able to sleep tonight because he played so badly? Did you see that mistake that he made? Oh my goodness, that was horrible. I'm not going to be thinking that about my friend, but I would be thinking that about myself probably, where I'm just completely beating myself up over these mistakes, or I'm getting so excited about the things I did well that I'm not looking at what I can improve. What I'm not doing is looking at my game objectively. When we are trying to work past a confirmation bias that is holding us back currently, we have to first look at our game objectively. Because remember, our minds naturally are seeking to validate what we believe. If I'm believing that I'm a poor player, my mind will try to validate that through only examining the mistakes and kind of bending reality to prove my point or prove my beliefs. But if I can look at my game objectively, I'm not at the mercy of my beliefs. I'm able to take a step back, separate myself from the game, separate my emotions a little bit, and truly examine what was real and what actually happened. Now, the way that you can do this in a little bit easier of a way is by writing it down. And this is why I always suggest to athletes to use a post-game evaluation, a post-practice evaluation, where you go through, you write down your answers to, what are some things you did well, what are some things you want to work on, you journal them, and then you have that record, but you've also given yourself the opportunity to consciously sit down and evaluate your game. The confirmation bias is going to hurt you as an athlete in sports because when you are seeking to validate the beliefs that you have about yourself and you have negative beliefs, you will constantly look for reasons to not feel good about your game. You're going to look at mistakes. You're going to dwell on mistakes. You're going to think, I'm just not good enough. And this feeds into a horrible, horrible cycle of further worsened confidence. So what you want to do first is you want to make sure you adopt a growth mindset. Recognize that whether or not you believe you're a poor player right now or a good player, there's always room to improve. Then you want to challenge those negative beliefs you have about yourself. And lastly, let's look at our games objectively instead of so emotionally. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training. And if you're interested in one-on-one mental coaching or any of the sports psychology programs I have available, I've put links to those in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best of success in all that you do.